Today in the workshop, we're getting started with Raspberry Pi Astronomy. You'll see how to make a solar telescope with a Raspberry Pi HQ camera to take pictures and video of the sun. We'll also get ready to observe the 2024 total solar eclipse. Here comes the sun, so welcome to the workshop. Well, hello and welcome to the workshop, and today we're going to be building a really interesting project, a Raspberry Pi based solar camera. Now, when I say building, I actually sort of mean more integrating, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking this very inexpensive and easy to obtain solar telescope. We're going to take out the eyepiece and replace it with the Raspberry Pi high quality camera and use that to stream out video so we can take a look at the sun, which is a really interesting thing to look at any time that you want to look at it, but it's especially interesting now because on the 8th of April, Mexico, Canada, and the United States are going to be experiencing a solar eclipse, and I'm very happy to say that the DroneBot Workshop is in the path of a total solar eclipse, and so I'm going to be using this to take pictures of the sun. Now, of course, you may not want to take pictures of the sun, but what I'm going to be showing you today is essentially how to mate a Raspberry Pi high-quality camera up with a telescope. And so you can use this for any astronomy purposes. So what we're really doing today is learning how to do astronomy with the Raspberry Pi. A telescope is an instrument that gathers light. The light that is gathered can be magnified using an eyepiece or photographed using photographic film or a CCD image sensor. There are several different configurations and types of telescopes, but they're essentially variations of two basic types. The oldest type of telescope is the refractor. In a refractor, light enters in the top and is sent through a lens where it is focused at the bottom to an eyepiece. The eyepiece itself consists of one or more lenses. The invention of the refractor is credited to Hans Lippershey, an optician in the Netherlands in the 17th century, but it was made popular by Galileo Galilei, who used it to discover Jupiter's 4 largest moons. The other basic type of telescope is a reflector. In a reflector, light comes in the top and is sent down to a concave mirror at the bottom. The mirror focuses the light onto a prism or another small mirror in the center, where it is sent up a tube to an eyepiece, which once again consists of a lens or several lenses. The reflector is often called a Newtonian telescope in reference to its inventor, Isaac Newton. The most important characteristic of a telescope is its light-gathering ability. The light-gathering ability of a telescope is determined by the diameter of the front lens in a refractor or by the diameter of the mirror in a reflector. Light gathering is much more important than magnification. In fact, the best combination is high light gathering and low magnification. A film or CCD sensor will allow for a long exposure. This increases the amount of light that the telescope is capable of gathering, and thus the number of images it's capable of seeing. With a solar telescope, we have a number of different considerations. Rather than trying to be sensitive to light, a solar telescope can be overloaded with light. This light by itself can overload the camera sensor, so you won't be able to get the fine details such as sunspots, as all of the camera sensor will simply be overloaded. Sending sunlight down the tube of a telescope can also overheat the components within the telescope. When working with solar astronomy, one needs to use a filter at the front of a telescope in order to limit the amount of light that gets in. Our solar telescope will be using a telescope that has a solar filter on the front. Now, the one I'm using already has the solar filter built in, but you can obtain solar filters or filtering material to use on any telescope. We'll be replacing the eyepiece of the telescope with a Raspberry Pi high-quality camera. We will of course be using a Raspberry Pi, which we will be connecting to the camera, and we will also be connecting to the internet, preferably through the Ethernet port of the Raspberry Pi. Once set up, this will allow us to stream video to other devices on our network or anywhere else in the world. We can also use it to stream data to common astronomy applications so that we can analyze our solar data much better. Our design will be based upon the Raspberry Pi high-quality camera. This is a design based upon the Sony IMX477 sensor, and it has some very impressive specifications. One specification that's ideal for this application is that it uses a C-mount for its lenses. In our case, we will not be using a lens. Instead, we'll be using a C-mount to 1.25-inch barrel adapter so that we can use this as a telescope eyepiece. Just about all telescopes use the 1.25-inch barrel, but you should check your telescope if you're adapting one, as some large refractor scopes use a 2-inch barrel. There's also another consideration when photographing the sun using our Pi solar camera or any other telescope. The sun does not stay stationary in the sky. Like all objects in the sky, it moves. It's actually not the sun moving, it's the Earth moving, but the effect is the same. In order to compensate for this movement, telescopes often make use of something called a clock drive. This is a relatively expensive mechanism that uses a motor and a pendulum to keep the telescope on track with objects in the sky and compensate for the Earth's movements. For about half the price of a clock drive, you can get an XY sky tracker. A sky tracker performs a similar function and has a feature such as a dial that will let you track objects like the sun and the moon automatically. A third DIY option is something called the barn door, which essentially consists of 2 plates and a hinge. You can build one of these for about $30 worth of parts, and you'll find a lot of designs here on YouTube and on the internet. If you're in the northern hemisphere, you line the hinge of the barn door up with Polaris, the North Star, and move the top plate in order to track objects in the sky. If you don't have a method of tracking the sun and want to photograph the eclipse, a simple method is just to align your telescope with the position of the moon at the time of the eclipse. Just keep the scope stationary and you'll get an excellent eclipse photo. So now let's build a Raspberry Pi solar camera and take a few pictures of the sun. Now, when I first started conceiving this project, I thought of a number of different methods of taking pictures of the sun. I even considered using something like a pinhole camera and focusing the Raspberry Pi high-quality camera onto that, but it became apparent that it was going to be difficult to build something inexpensive that could still get a reasonable picture of the sun. And then I found this thing. I mean, this is so inexpensive, I really can't build anything for the price. This is actually a reasonable scope. It's from Celestron, and we'll take a closer look at it a bit later. It comes with everything you need, including an eyepiece, and the key thing is this is a standard size eyepiece. So not only can you put other eyepieces in here to get a better view of the sun, it means that our project is adaptable to any telescope, and so it can be used for any astronomy purpose. Now, this scope comes along with a tripod as well, and because the DroneBot Workshop is a family-friendly channel, I will not be reviewing this tripod because I would require language that I can't use on the channel. Suffice to say, we're not going to be using the tripod, but the scope does have a standard 1/4-inch thread on it, and it can be used with any photography tripod. So let's take a closer look at this and all of the other bits and pieces we're going to be using to get our Pi in the sky. And this is the solar telescope that is the heart of our solar camera, and it's the EclipSmart by Celestron. And as I said, it's a very inexpensive device. It's about $100 US. It's basically a refractor. It's got a prism on the end and an eyepiece, which we can remove like this. And of course, we're going to remove our eyepiece and put a Raspberry Pi HQ camera in its place. Otherwise, you use this to focus it. So you just use this to go back and forth and focus. The construction isn't too bad. It's mostly plastic over here, but the tube is metal. Now, if you look in the front over here, you won't see anything because the front lens has already got the solar filter built into it. And of course, you could use another telescope and just put a solar filter on the front of it. You don't have to use this one. One kind of neat feature about this is this finder here. This is kind of like a sundial, and and you aim it so that you get a shadow in the center there, and that should basically line the telescope up with the sun, or at least in theory it should. In practice, I've been finding that a little bit difficult to do, but I think it just takes a bit of practice. But otherwise, this is the optics that we are going to be using for today's solar camera build. And here's the camera that we're going to be using, the Raspberry Pi HQ camera. And we've used this module before in the DroneBot Workshop. It's a very nice little module. You can see on the back over here, you've got the connector that you would use in order to connect the ribbon cable to the Raspberry Pi. And on the front of the camera, if you peek into it, you can actually see the sensor itself, and I don't want to touch that because it's actually exposed over here. On the bottom of the camera, it's got a very convenient 1/4-inch thread, and that's useful, of course, if you want to put it on a tripod. We won't be using that feature today in our design, but it is nonetheless a useful feature. And we're going to be using this along with a coupling in order to mate this with our telescope. Now, another thing that you might want to pick up is a lens for this camera. This uses what's called a Type-C thread, and so it uses a Type-C lens, and I've got one over here. Now, we don't need the lens for our actual project, but what you might want the lens for is to test everything before we put the camera together, because of course we're not going to get a picture unless we get a picture of the sun. Now, if you're using a regular telescope with a solar filter, you could do your testing by just removing the solar filter, but if you're using the scope that I'm using, you probably want to put a lens onto it just to see if the camera's working and everything. And you can get a lot of different lenses for Type-C, and Raspberry Pi has a few of them that you might want to look at. But at any rate, this is the camera that we're going to be using for our project today. Now, here are some other bits and pieces that we're going to require for our project. You won't actually need every single one of these. There's a few optional things here, but most of them are required. Of course, the heart of the project is this. It's the Raspberry Pi, and I'm using a Raspberry Pi 4. You could use a 3 or a 5 if you wished. The key is I want to use a Raspberry Pi that has an available Ethernet port on it, because we can use Wi-Fi for this, and I know that in outdoor situations, maybe Wi-Fi is the only thing you could use, but if you can use Ethernet, you'll get a much better quality stream. I've also got a heatsink case for the Raspberry Pi here. This is one by Picamera2, and the Pi just basically fits right into the case. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that into this box. Now, you'll notice this box has 4 holes on the bottom. What I've done is on the bottom of my case, I've drilled an equivalent 4 holes, and I've also tapped those 4 holes with an M3 tap, so I can just use M3 screws to hold it in. And so this whole assembly is going to go into here. Now, this box has all of these little plugs in it. It's just a utility box, and they just pop right out. They're just little plastic plugs or rubberized plugs. I'm going to take all of them out, and that'll let me get all my cables into the Raspberry Pi. It'll let me get at the Ethernet and one of the USBs over here. It'll also give it a little bit of airflow as well. Now, I'm going to mount the box on the side with this, and this is just a photographic 1/4-inch to 1/4-inch adapter, and this is just a 1/4-inch nut, and I've got a hole drilled on the side of the box here for it, and so it's just going to mount in like that, and then I'm going to put one of these photo clamps onto it, and this will allow me to clamp it onto the side of my tripod. Now, you could come up with another mounting arrangement if you wished. Otherwise, another essential component is this. This is the coupler, the 1 1/4-inch coupler that couples to the C camera mount that our Raspberry Pi HQ camera uses. So this is an essential component. This is an optional component. This is what's called a Barlow lens, and I'm just going to experiment with this. It doubles the magnification of anything that you put it into. So you just put it in between the eyepiece and the telescope, or in our case, in between the sensor and the telescope. So that's just for experimenting, and that's optional. Of course, I have a power supply for my Raspberry Pi. Now, I'm fortunate enough that I can use my solar scope indoors, so I can just use regular AC power. But if you can't, you could use something like a USB power bank. A keyboard is optional, but it is going to be handy when I set things up, so I've just got this little portable keyboard over here as well. And finally, of course, the cable. We need a camera cable, and this is a 500 millimeter camera cable. I think it's the longest one you can get for the Pi camera, so that'll give us a bit of distance between the box and the camera. So now that we've seen all the bits and pieces, let's get this all together. Now, mounting the camera on the telescope is a very simple thing to do thanks to the use of this little adapter that adapts a C-mount thread over to a 1 1/4 inch barrel. And it literally just screws onto the camera. And so you get that on nice and tight. And there's our entire assembly. And what we can do is take the cap off the telescope. You want to make certain to keep the cap around so that you have this covered whenever you don't have a eyepiece or this in. And then you can just put that in and tighten it over here. And you can angle it at any angle that you want. And that really is the complete job. That is actually just the camera sensor attached to the telescope in place of the eyepiece. Now, of course, you're going to want to keep the eyepiece around because when you're focusing on the sun, you're going to want to use the eyepiece to get the focus before you put the camera back in. So it's very easy to take it in and out with the set screw over here. But that's the complete assembly. Now let's go and take a look at the Raspberry Pi assembly. And here is the Raspberry Pi and case assembly completed, and you see I've also got attached to it my little clamp so I can clamp it onto my tripod when I'm finished. Now I had to make a few changes on the case. First I had to cut a little bit more on the front here because I found I wasn't able to get in at the USB-C power, and of course that's pretty essential. In retrospect, I kind of wish I'd moved this up about 3 or 4 millimeters because the power is still kind of tight over there, but it does make it. I also did an equivalent cut over here in the front to expose all of the USB connectors. And I'm going to be using a keyboard and a mouse and a monitor when I'm setting this up, but this actually runs in headless mode, so you really don't need to expose anything but the power connection and the connection to the camera. And speaking to the camera connection, I've got their ribbon cable running out here. I took one of their little grommet things and I cut a slit into it to make kind of a strain relief, if you can see that, for the camera cable. And on the bottom of this, I've also added a few rubber feet so that it can stand up on its own. And the only thing it really needs is the lid, and it's ready to go onto my scope. Now, I want to address something about the Ethernet. A couple of people might be worried about that, thinking, well, how am I going to get Ethernet outside? And I can certainly understand that. First of all, you can use Wi-Fi, but I would not use this type of a heatsink arrangement because it makes the Wi-Fi performance worse. You'll have to try a different sort of arrangement. Also, another thing you can consider is that RPI make these adapters that allow you to extend the length of the camera cable for the Raspberry Pi camera, and they are a two-piece unit. One end connects to the Raspberry Pi, the other end to the camera, and you can connect the two of them up using an HDMI cable of up to 10 meters, so you can get about 32 feet of extension on the camera, and apparently it improves the performance of it as well, so you might want to look at that. Therefore, you could keep this unit indoors and just have the camera outside. So that might be a solution for the Ethernet requirement here. But at any rate, this is ready to go. All I have to do is put the lid on it, and we're ready to use it with our solar telescope. So now that we have our hardware together, it's time to focus on the software. Now we are going to be running this on a Raspberry Pi, and so obviously we need to install the latest version of the Raspberry Pi operating system. That's sort of a given. I'm going to assume you know how to set up a Raspberry Pi and that you know how to enable it so that the camera will work. After that, we're going to need to put some software onto the Raspberry Pi so we can stream the video from the Pi onto our network and pick it up. And there's a number of different choices over here, including one that is more suitable for professional astronomy and one that I think is really a great option for just about everybody. So let's go and take a look at a few of those software choices that we have for the Raspberry Pi. In order to demonstrate the different software options that we have for the Raspberry Pi, I've taken the camera off of the telescope and put the lens onto it, and I've got it aimed at a target right now, and we'll just use that as a test image while I demonstrate the different types of software that we could run on the Pi for astronomy applications. Now, it may be odd to start my demonstration off with some software that we won't be running with our Raspberry Pi solar camera, but it would be remiss of me not to show you Astroberry because it's the most popular platform for astronomy on the Raspberry Pi. Now, Astroberry is not a program. It's a collection of open source applications that are made for astronomy. They've got a number of them. If you look under education here, you'll see things that are planetariums, you'll see star charts, you'll see software that's meant to drive the clock drive and the star drives on your telescope to orient it to the correct place. And you'll also see capture software. And Astroberry is very easy to install because it's available as an image file. So you just burn the image onto a micro SD, insert it into the Raspberry Pi, and you're good to go. Unfortunately, at least as of this time, Astroberry will not run on the Raspberry Pi 5 because it uses an older version of the Raspberry Pi operating system, one that is not supported by the new hardware on the Raspberry Pi 5. So you'll need a 4 or less to run it on. Now, why won't I be using this with the Pi solar camera? Well, let me demonstrate. This is OA Capture, which is one of the capture utilities included with Astroberry. I actually have it connected to the Raspberry Pi camera right now, but the image is supposed to be over here. And as you can see, it's an image of nothing. And none of these controls over here for format or anything will change that. It's just an image of nothing. Now, if I go and plug a USB camera into the Raspberry Pi, it'll work fine. I'll get an image over here. So if you do happen to be using one of those cameras that fit into your telescope in place of the eyepiece that has a USB output on them, and there are several of them, you could use it with Astroberry, and it's one of the reasons that I thought I would mention it. But otherwise, it's a great suite of applications. Unfortunately, it won't work with this camera. I've looked in their forum. It's a common problem. It's a known problem, but no one seems to have a solution for it. So alas, we will not be using it, but it's a great set of applications nonetheless. Now for this next demonstration, we're in Microsoft Windows because we want to run an application called SharpCap, and it can only be run in Windows. And SharpCap is a capture program for professional astronomy equipment, and it can be used, among other things, with things that use the ASCOM protocol. The ASCOM protocol is a protocol used by professional astronomy equipment, such as telescopes as well as XY positioners, and you can run a whole observatory full of equipment using this protocol. Now on the Raspberry Pi, we're currently running an open source program called the RPI Cam ASCOM Alpaca program, and it allows you to take a Raspberry Pi high quality camera like the one we have and use it as a streaming device using the ASCOM protocol. And so we can use SharpCap and programs like it to view the stream. So it's going right now. If I look under cameras, I should see it. And here it is under ASCOM cameras, the Raspberry Pi camera. And we've connected to it. And you'll notice everything takes a little while to come in, and that's because I'm exposing right now at 100 milliseconds. So it's going to take 1/10 of a second for every exposure. You can set the exposure differently. You've got all kinds of controls here, including controls you probably wouldn't know what to do with. At least I don't. There's a histogram over here. There's a number of things dedicated for astronomy. Like, for example, they have presets for a number of astronomical objects such as the sun, the moon, a few planets, and a few galaxies, including M31, the Andromeda galaxy, that's going to swallow our galaxy in about 4 billion years. So you might want to keep an eye on that one. Now, the controls here are clearly made for professional astronomers, and many of them are non-functional in this version. You have to buy the professional version. But if you're into professional astronomy and want to use the Raspberry Pi with a telescope, this is the perfect way of doing it. And I've got instructions for installing RPI Cam ASCOM Alpaca on the DroneBotWorkshop.com website on the article that accompanies this video, which you'll find linked below the video. So if you'd like to set that up, you can go do it. However, it's a bit too professional for me, so I've got another solution that I think will work a little better just for taking pictures of the sun. Now the software that I'm going to be using to stream video from the Pi solar camera is called Picamera2 Web UI Lite, and it's available on GitHub. Now don't let the Lite word fool you over here. This has all the features that we will need. It'll allow us to adjust all of the features of the camera. It will allow us to stream the video. It will also allow us to record video as well as to record still pictures. Pretty well everything we need for our solar camera. So let's move over to the Raspberry Pi and install Picamera2 Web UI Lite. I'm on the Raspberry Pi right now, and this is the latest version of the Raspberry Pi operating system, what they call Bookworm. And I've opened up a document that you can get off the DroneBotWorkshop.com website, and this is my cheat sheet for installing this program. And I've got cheat sheets also for the Alpaca ASCOM driver as well, the one that we looked at previously. So this is an easy way to work with the command line on the Raspberry Pi. So I've got the cheat sheet open, and I've also got the terminal open here. Now, the first thing I've got here is just a command that we can use to actually test out our camera to see if it's actually working, and that's probably a good thing to do, so let's just do that. So we just copy these, and then right-click on here, and you can use a paste, and then hit enter. And there's our camera. And we can use this to set up the focus on the camera if we wish and things like that. It's not so bad as it is right now. There we go, a little bit better. And once we're happy the camera's working, we can just close that. And let's just clear this. Okay, back to the cheat sheet. I'm not going to do the operating system upgrade right now. We'll just get right to getting the software files. So we use this command here. And we've got it. Now we can unzip the files. And we'll change directory. And one thing about this command is when they do future updates, the directory name may change. So you may have to alter this one. But it seems to work right now. And then we can actually run the application by typing python app.py. And we are working right now. And so what we need to do right now is go to a web browser on another machine and take a look at what it is that we're streaming. Now, in order to pick this up, we're going to need to go to our Raspberry Pi's address at port 8080. And so just go to the address of your Pi, and you should get this wonderful screen over here, and there's a lot to it. Now, this is the feed of the camera, and it is indeed a live feed. I can move my fingers in front of it, and you see it. There is a small delay of about a second or so, so be aware of that. Now, you've got a number of settings over here. Here's just simple orientation, so you can flip it horizontally or vertically. Gain and exposure settings, and there's a lot of settings over here that you can use. Auto white balance settings in a similar fashion, there are settings for that. Brightness and contrast, something you'll probably want to make good use of when you're taking pictures of the sun. And here's an interesting one. You can actually crop your picture by specifying the size of the crop and the offset of the crop as well. So that's an interesting feature. And since the sun is completely round, you might want a square picture instead. And some camera capture settings as well. Now, in addition to that, you can capture an image directly off of here. Once you capture images, you can go to your image gallery and view them. This gives you all the information about the camera that we're using and the different modes we can put it in. So we can put the camera into different modes with different frames per second, etc. So it's quite complex there. And an about page that lets you know all about this great application we're using it, and about James Mitchell, the fellow who wrote it for us. And so this is great, this webcam UI as it is, but it's got another feature as well. And if we go over here to the URL and append that with the word video feed, I've got that down over here, you'll see that we get a full screen. And I can make that my full screen if I wish. A full screen stream of the video. So if you want to stream it somewhere, you can do that. You can also do something else. You can take that same URL, and then you can go into VLC Media Player, and go into Media, and open a network stream. I'm sorry it's hard to see because it's a 4K monitor. That's the same URL, and just play that. And you've got it there in VLC. And now, of course, you can use the controls in VLC to record it or do what you wish. So it's a very versatile application, perfect for our Pi solar camera. Now, one final thing you're going to want to do after you've confirmed that your web UI is working correctly is to make it start up automatically every time that the Raspberry Pi is booted up. That way we don't need a keyboard or monitor. Essentially, we'll run the Pi in headless mode and just let it stream video. So I created a file to do that. I called mine startweb.sh. You can call it anything.sh. It's a bash file. And in this bash file, I basically jump into the directory that I've got the UI in, so I change directory, and then I run the app with the same command, python app.py. Of course, when you create this file, your home directory probably won't be named DroneBot Workshop, so you'll have to put the name of your directory, but otherwise it's the same file. And then in my rc.local, which is in the etc directory, this is a file that is run after you log in, and if you want to start something up, you can put it at the end of this file. So at the end of this file, what I have done is I've added this line. The rest of this was already in there, and basically it's a line that goes to startweb.sh, and I've put an ampersand character after it, and the ampersand character means it'll run in its own separate process, and it won't hold anything up that might be waiting before this exit is occurred. Now, if you want the instructions for installing these, just go to the article that accompanies this video on the DroneBotWorkshop.com website, and I'll give you the instructions for creating these two files and installing them so that your Raspberry Pi will boot up running the camera web UI interface. Now, an eclipse has been described as being one of the marvels of nature. It is indeed a spectacular sight. I have never seen a total solar eclipse, but I've seen several solar eclipses that are partial, and even a partial eclipse is an amazing thing to see. Now, I'm fortunate in the fact that I'm in the path of this eclipse, and weather permitting, I should be able to see a total eclipse of the sun on the 8th of April. But of course, before you do that, you need to prepare a few things. You need to get ready to make certain that you experience the eclipse to its fullest, and also make certain, of course, that you do it safely. So let's take a look at a few of the things you need to do to get ready to observe an eclipse of the sun. Preparing for a solar eclipse really isn't that difficult. It boils down to three things: finding the best spot to view the eclipse from, having an accurate weather report to avoid all those pesky clouds, and of course having the correct safety equipment so you can enjoy the eclipse safely. One great way of finding the best spot for an eclipse is to use one of the many apps available for the solar eclipse. These apps will use the GPS in your phone to tell you exactly what you can expect to see at your location, and even include alarms that allow you to know when it's safe to take your glasses off and look directly at the sun during the period of totality. Another great resource is timeanddate.com and their eclipse section, where they have a lot of data for your area and where to best see the eclipse from. An accurate weather report is essential for enjoying the eclipse. There are many apps that will give you the weather and that will also give you a live cloud cover, and that's what you want. You want to know where the clouds are going to be. A great resource on the internet is zoom.earth, where you can get a live satellite map. And of course, safety equipment, and nothing is as important as a good pair of safety glasses. Make certain that your safety glasses have ISO certification so that you can enjoy the eclipse safely. And so just keep these 3 points in mind, and you'll be able to enjoy the event of a lifetime. And of course, the most essential thing to have on the day of the eclipse is a set of the eclipse glasses. And you want to make certain that you buy them from a certified manufacturer so you know you've got the right thing, that they have the ISO certification. These are basically a set of the glasses, and they're pretty simple things. If you're wearing eyeglasses like I do, these go over your eyeglasses, and they have a bend on the side over here so that they can accommodate different sizes of people's heads. So they're very handy to have. You can get them in a pack, and so I bought a package of them. I've got 4 of them, and it also came with this really cool little guide to the eclipse, and it tells you all about the eclipse and about the process of the eclipse, etc. And so that's a really handy thing, because the eclipse can also be a very good learning experience for people. A lot of people aren't aware as to the mechanism behind an eclipse, or why we don't have an eclipse once a month, since the moon rotates around the Earth every 28 days. And so it really can be an educational experience. And just make certain that you have something like these glasses in order to play it safe. Now, I wanted to show you the resource they have on timeanddate.com for the eclipse, because this is pretty cool. They have it set up for just about every municipality. Here's the one for my municipality, and they tell you exactly the details of the eclipse. They give you a video, which is the same for everybody, as to what it's going to look like. Here's what I like. They break it down to the exact times that you're going to see everything. Here's where the maximum eclipse is, the totality begins and ends, and they tell you the direction and altitude, so you can set up your telescope or your camera exactly where you want it to be, so you could photograph the eclipse if that's what you want to do. This is also neat, this interactive map that they have, the where to see the eclipse. And if you zoom in on your map, you'll see first of all that we're just on the edge of the eclipse over here. If we were to travel, let's say, in towards Sherbrooke or Granby, we would see it much better. But I'm going to zoom in on the island over here and show you something, just what it means just to move a little distance. Now, this is the line for the eclipse. It's too bad they use the same color as some of the street lines. But let's say you go out to the area that I'm in and you click on it, you'll see I'll get a duration of totality of 46 seconds. If I move down to about the most south point of the island over here, let's say this is, I think, Anglion Park. If I click on there, I'll get 1 minute and 50 seconds, so I get an extra minute if I was willing to make this short trip. Of course, since there are a lot of people in this neighborhood, I think a lot of people will be making that trip. So since I can see the eclipse from my upstairs spare bedroom window, I've turned that into my observatory, and that's where I'll be viewing the total eclipse of the sun on the 8th of April. Well, welcome to the observatory, formerly known as my spare bedroom. And as you can see, I've got the Pi solar camera set up and ready to go. It's nighttime now, so there's nothing to see, but you can see the equipment I have. I've got a computer beside it so that I can monitor the stream. I've also got a regular camera up there, and it's got a solar filter on the front. And we should discuss what you can do with regular cameras in order to view the sun. Now, you can use pretty well any camera as a solar camera, providing that you put a filter onto the front of it. And I've got two filtering options for you over here. This is also similar to the filtering options you would have for a telescope. Now, underneath this cardboard is some solar filtering sheets. And this is a 6x6 piece. It's actually rather expensive, which is why I'm keeping it under the cardboard. But this can be placed on the front of a telescope or a camera in order to filter out the sun. I'll just peel back a little bit of it over here so we can maybe see the filtering. There we go. That's it under here. And it looks like it's pure black, but it actually does let a small amount of light in. It says over here, 1/1000th of 1% of the light comes in. This is also a filter, and this is one designed for a camera. You can get them in various different sizes. And this is a solar filter. Again, as you can see, it doesn't look like we can really see through this, but a small fraction of light does get in. And you can get these filters in different sizes, so you just pick up one that is suitable for your own camera. And you can also get these for the front of telescopes. And so you can pretty well adapt any optical instrument and make it into a solar observing instrument by using one of these filters. Now, for those of you who are interested in photographing the sun using a camera, I just want to show you the setup I've got. I've used one of my older DSLRs and brought new life into it as a solar camera. Now, I started off using the kit lens that came with it, with this lens here, and I put the filter onto the front of the kit lens, and I was indeed able to take a picture of the sun, but, well, let me show you the picture of the sun that I took. It's not exactly great. You can see I've got this wonderful little dot in the sky, but I think for an eclipse photo that's going to be a little less than spectacular. So I added this onto it. I added this telephoto lens onto it, and this is a very inexpensive 700 millimeter lens, and as you can see, I've got the solar filter. It's right over here on the front of the lens, and using this I was able to get a much better picture of the sun. Here's an example of an image that I took of the sun using this lens, and as you can see, it brings it out a lot more. You can even see a couple of sunspots on it. So I think this is going to be great for an eclipse picture. And so this is a sort of arrangement that you want if you want to use a standard camera to take pictures of the sun. You just need to make certain that you got as big a telephoto as you can onto it. A zoom isn't going to be really sufficient. And also make absolutely certain you put a solar filter onto the front of it. And you can probably grab some great pictures of the sun and of this year's eclipse if you happen to be in the neighborhood. So I'm still getting the observatory set up, and I've had a lack of sunny days. However, I've had the camera set up for a while, so I got some nice pictures from that. And I've had at least one day to play with the Pi Solar Telescope. I did start off by using the eyepiece to find the sun initially, but I got used to using that finder and was able to just use the Pi HQ camera instead of the eyepiece, so it's been permanently attached to the scope. The mounting arrangement for the case worked very well. I had to reposition it a couple of times to keep it from interfering with the arm on the fluid head of the tripod, but otherwise it's a great way of mounting it. And here's one of my first pictures, literally my third picture. Obviously I've got some color issues and I've got to play around with those camera controls, and there are a lot of controls to play with. If I color enhance the photo, it's actually not a bad picture of the sun's disk, and you can see quite a few sunspots. We're actually in a period of fairly high sunspot activity, so even without a solar eclipse, sunspots are going to prove to be interesting viewing. And here's the first video of the sun that I took. This is speeded up by 5 times, by the way. One thing that you'll notice is that it shakes quite a bit, and it's sensitive to any vibration in the room. There is provisions on the tripod that I'm using for adding a sandbag, so I'm going to try that and see if I can do something else to try to steady things up. But all in all, things seem to be working out pretty well with the solar telescope, and I've got a little less than a month to prepare for the eclipse day. All I'm wishing for now is sunny weather. So I guess I had better address the elephant in the room, and that is, of course, what if after building all of this stuff, after going through all this effort to take pictures of the sun, the 8th of April turns out to be a cloudy, rainy, or even snowy day? Well, that is a possibility. In fact, here in Montreal, we have only a 32% chance of it actually being a perfectly clear day, and we have a 30% chance of it raining or snowing. Now, if it means anything, the 8th of April last year was a perfectly clear day, but of course, that's just last year. And right now, it's a little too soon to believe any weather forecasts for that day. So what if it rains and I can't see the eclipse? Well, of course, I'll be very sad about it. I won't deny that. But I'll still have an instrument that can take pictures of the sun, and the sun is a fascinating thing to look at. I think it's the most amazing star in the universe, but I'm a bit biased about that. But right now we're in an area of high sunspot activity. Sunspots go in an 11-year cycle, and we're coming off the peak of one right now, so there's a lot of sunspots you can take a look at any day, not just on the day of the eclipse. So this is still a very worthwhile project, and of course being able to connect this up to a standard telescope opens up a whole world of astronomy to anyone with a Raspberry Pi and an interest in the stars. Now, if you want some more information about this project, there's an article that accompanies this video on the DroneBotWorkshop.com website, and you'll find the link to that article right below the video. When you're on the website, consider signing up for my newsletter, not a sales letter, just my way of letting you know what's going on in the workshop and updating you on upcoming videos. And of course, it's free to sign up. Another thing that's free to sign up for is the DroneBot Workshop forums, where you can discuss electronic projects with a number of like-minded individuals. There's some information right below this video about signing up for the forum. And as you're in a signing up mood, if you haven't yet, please sign up and subscribe to the YouTube channel. I love to get new subscribers and would very much like to make you my next one. All you need to do is click on that red subscribe button, and if you also click the bell notifications, you'll get notified every time that I make a new video. So until we meet the next time, please take care of yourself, stay safe out there, stay safe observing the sun, and I hope you enjoy the total solar eclipse on the 8th of April. And we'll see you soon here in the DroneBot Workshop. Goodbye for now.